religious gatherings, the city's proposal does not close religious institutions. We know religious institutions have been a problem. We know mass gatherings are the super spreader events. We know there have been mass gatherings going on in concert with religious institutions in these communities for weeks. For weeks. I don't mean little violations. You're only supposed to have 50, they had 55. I'm talking about you're only supposed to have 50 outdoors. They had 1,000. These are pictures from the past couple of weeks. And these are just emblematic. You've all seen pictures like this for weeks. What did you think was going to happen? What did you think was going to happen? Religious institutions are mass gatherings and raise the greatest potential. It's schools and it's large mass gatherings. Schools, frankly, because they're students, and that's where our heart goes, our priority goes. But in terms of numbers, it's large gatherings, and large religious gatherings are large gatherings. These have been going on for weeks. You don't see masks, and you see clear violation of social distancing. When were these pictures from?
Well, the one on the right is more recent than the one on the left.
Okay. But they're in the recent past. So this has been going on for weeks. We've been talking about it for weeks. If we're going to keep religious institutions open, it can only be with two conditions. One, the community must agree, whether it's the Jewish community, whether we're talking about black churches, whether we're talking about Roman Catholic churches, the religious community has to agree to the rules. And they have to agree that they are going to follow the rules. And they have to agree that they are going to be a full partner in the enforcement of the rules. That's condition one. I'm going to meet with members of the ultra-Orthodox community tomorrow. I want to have that conversation directly myself. This cannot happen again. If you do not agree to enforce the rules, then we'll close the institutions down. I am prepared to do that. Second, after we receive the agreement, an agreement is only as good as the enforcement. We have to have real enforcement in these clusters and the other statewide clusters. The enforcement will help the community. If the rule is no more than 50% of the people in a black church, I want someone at that door when 50% enter the church, a person there who says to the pastor, you agreed to follow the rules, that's 50%, that's it, or we close it down. It does not work without enforcement. But both of those conditions have to be in place. And if I do not have the agreement from the religious community directly as a starting point, then we will close down the religious institutions. If they do agree to do it in partnership, then I want a real enforcement capacity. We're not going to make the same mistake twice. Tomorrow I'm going to meet with the larger congregations, New York City, Rockland, Orange, Nassau, and have that conversation. That's step one. If we get past step one, then we need enforcement in place. Enforcement is enforcement. I've said this to you. I have this conversation with the local officials all day long. Well, we issue warnings. That's not enforcement. Well, we do public education. That's not enforcement. There is no person in the state of New York who needs you to tell them at this point, you must wear a mask. They know they must wear a mask. There is no need for public education. Find me the person who says, I never heard that. Really? You have to wear a mask? I never heard it. Find me the person in the state who says that. Enforcement is enforcement, okay? New York City only did 26 enforcement actions. Enforcement is, here's a violation. New York City deployed 1,000 people for days, 3 days. 1,000 people for 3 days is what? Is 24,000 personnel hours. 24,000 personnel hours, you only did 26 enforcement actions? That's not enforcement. We have to be more aggressive. I understand that it's impolitic. I understand the sensitivity in the community now, but I also understand you will see people die if we don't do more enforcement. I also understand that we have learned this experience before. This is the bars and restaurants story. Week after week after week, we have to do the enforcement. Nobody's doing the enforcement. Week after week after week, nothing changes. The state took it over. I did 1,200 enforcement actions. 228 immediate license revocations, just on bars and restaurants. 1,200. Now, was I happy about doing 1,200 enforcement actions? No. Immediate license revocation is very difficult. That business basically closes. People lose their jobs. You don't want to do this. But life is options, my friends. You don't do this, the virus spreads, people